International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola will today lead a South African delegation during a bilateral engagement with Mozambique. The talks, we're told, are aimed at finding solutions to challenges in Maputo. Watching developments on that front is SABC News reporter Khayelihle Khumalo, who joins us now live from Malelane in Mpumalanga. And I imagine that is the site where those talks are likely to begin before that site visit along the Libombo border post. It's difficult to kind of tell for now, Khayelihle, where these talks will start, given the multiplicity of the issues in Mozambique.
Well, that's right. And quite a very important meeting here for South Africa and its neighbor Mozambique. As you know, this is a very big issue for the SADC region. We've seen so many meetings already being held. You go back to that important meeting by the SADC leaders in Harare in Zimbabwe, given all the challenges that are facing Mozambique, post-election violence that we saw erupting. But also we've seen also from one of the leaders, Venancio Mondlane, essentially, who has been a ringleader, a man who's really just become a face of these demonstrations. Also, we've seen so many fatalities in Mozambique. I think it is indeed a very just point of concern for countries like South Africa. You also go back, to that state visit by the Angolan President João Lourenço in South Africa, where he stated in no uncertain terms that this issue is very worrying, but it should be addressed, and countries like South Africa should really play a very important role. So I can definitely confirm to you, Ayanda, that now those talks are currently underway. Minister Lamola is leading the South African delegation, joined also by his counterparts, the likes of Minister of Transport here in South Africa, Baba Creasy, but also I did see the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition as well, Pakstau, but also they're joined by their counterparts from Mozambique, especially given the very importance of Maputo corridor, a very important area when you look at the promotion of intra-Africa trade, a very important area for so many provinces here in South Africa, the likes of Gauteng, obviously Limpopo, and also Mpumalanga itself, given the very importance around the issues of logistics, where it's connecting South Africa's economic hub essentially with the port of Maputo. So this really remains a point of concern for South Africa, especially because, as you know, the spillover effects are quite inevitable if your neighbor is facing a trouble. So then essentially it does affect you, Ayanda.
Absolutely. We know, of course, that South Africa has a history of what's being described as quiet diplomacy when it comes to some of these socio-political issues involving our neighbors. And one has to wonder to what extent that will be the approach and how effective that will be if really at the heart of it is the political violence in Mozambique.
I think what has been a stance of South Africa and is a whole issue of calling for calm, restraint, de-escalation as well, and really just talking about a number of issues. So I just keep looking over there because we're supposed to be joined by Minister Lamola spokesperson, but I see that he's still occupied. But something that is quite key for South Africa, and I think it's really in the interest of SADC region, if there's a hotspot for countries like South Africa and many other countries within the SADC region to be seen to be proactive in dealing with this issue. I think one of the major issues that was raised by the human rights activists in Mozambique, they were raising concern about the crackdown, the gross human rights violation that you have seen. So prior to the SADC meeting, for example, on the crisis in Mozambique, they were saying that there should be an envoy sent to Maputo to try and collect the information from all the parties, from the opposition parties, from so many role players in Mozambique, especially now at such a very critical time where we know that on the 23rd of December, that's when the Constitutional Council of Mozambique will have to make pronouncement in as far as the validity of these results. But what is definitely clear is that South Africa is very committed in making sure that there is long-lasting peace in Maputo. Once again, going back to that state visit with the Angolan President João Lourenço, also who happens to be the incoming African Union chairperson, where President Cyril Ramaphosa as well spoke about the issue of saying that this is a great concern for countries like South Africa, given what is happening in Mozambique, the political stalemate stalemate that you have seen, especially because, and I mean, this is a country that really knows the ramifications of the conflict, but also what we have been able to establish is that Mozambican Foreign Affairs Minister Veronica Dlovo is not here. As you know, that Mozambique is one of the non-permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, but other counterparts, other ministers from Mozambique, they are right in South Africa to address the issues that are really at stake. And also, you're talking about the peak season. I mean, this is the festive season where the tourists, where some South Africans really go to Maputo. You really have a good time. So we've seen also the cancellations of those bookings, really posing a massive threat for Mozambique's economy.